Our lesson today is on mixed numbers, part 6, subtracting mixed numbers with unlike denominators. Mixed numbers are numbers like 3 and 2/3 and 1 and 3/6. A mixed number has a whole number, in this case the 3, and a fraction, the 2/3. And you can see it modeled here, 1, 2, 3 wholes, and our 2/3. And when we subtract mixed numbers with unlike denominators, we always want to key in and check first on the bottom number of the fractions or the denominators. Our first step in subtracting is to take our 2/3 and subtract the 3/6. And right away we see that the 3 and the 6 are not the same, and we're not allowed to subtract when they're not the same. So our job is to make them the same. And what we're going to do is we're going to find something called the least common denominator, which is, in other words, we're going to use multiples. It would be a good idea to know your multiplication facts, but if you don't, you can use a multiplication table that you can just Google, do a Google search for. So we're going to start with our bottom number, right, which is our thirds. Multiples of 3 would be right here, 3, 6, 9, and 12. Usually just have to list about 4. And multiples of 6, 6, 12, 18, 24. So multiples of 6, I would write as 6, but right away I see that we have a common. Common means that on this top line and on the bottom we have a match, the first match, so we're good. Our job is to turn this 3 into the 6 and the 6 into a 6, and we do that by multiplying. 3 times what number equals 6? In this case it's going to be 1, 2. And then we multiply both the top and bottom. 2 times 2 on the top is 4, and 3 times 2 is 6. On the bottom, 6, we can just see that that's just going to be 1. We're just multiplying by 1 to show our work. 3 times 1 on the top is 3, and 6 times 1 on the bottom is 6. And you can see now we are good to subtract because our denominators are the same. 4/6 minus 3/6 is 1/6. And our last step is that we would go to our whole numbers. 3 minus 1 is 2, which I'm going to write over here, or 2 and 1/6. If we were to show this on our models, we're subtracting the 1 whole. Our 2 wholes would be right here. But what we did is that we turned these with our steps here into sixths, and we took away 3 of them. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, and had our 1/6 right there. When we subtract mixed numbers with unlike denominators, there's 3 rules you need to remember. The bottom numbers must be the same to subtract. So in this case, we see that they're not. If they're not the same, our job is to make them the same. And to do that, we use multiplication and we find our least common denominator. In other words, we're going to find multiples of our bottom numbers and find a common multiple or a common denominator. 8 3/4 minus 3 1/3. We start with our subtraction of the fractions, and we cannot do that because our bottom number is not the same. So that would break our first rule. So we go to our second rule. If they're not the same, we make them the same, and we're going to use our multiples. Multiples of 4, which is our bottom number, 4, 8, 12, 16. Usually you don't have to write more than that. Sometimes you do. And for 3, 3, 6, 9, 12. 3, 6, 9, 12. And I'm looking for my common on both the top and the bottom, and I see we have 12. So, okay. Our job is to turn the fourths into 12ths and the thirds into 12ths so that they're common. We do that by multiplication. And I'm going to start with my fourths. 4 times what number equals 12? Little trick, just count 1, 2, 3. We're going to multiply top and bottom. 3 times 3 is 9, and 4 times 3 is 12. On the bottom, 3 times what number will equal 12? Little trick, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 times 4 is 4, and 3 times 4 is our 12. And now we're able to subtract, because we are now meeting our first rule that says that the bottom number, the denominators, must be the same. 9/4 minus 9/12 minus 4/12 would equal 5/12. And then 8 minus 3 on our whole numbers would equal 5, and 5/12 would be our mixed number. 9 3/8 minus 5 1/4. Pause a minute, see if you can solve. Okay, we're going to start with our fractions, and right away I see that they are not the same, and our job is, rule 2, is to make them the same. I'm going to use multiples. Multiples of 8, 16, 24, and 32. And then multiples of 4, 4, 8, 12, 16. 4, 8, but I'm going to stop here because I see that we have our 8, so we do have our common, so that's good. Our job is to turn these into 8s. Well, this first one's easy. It's just going to be, we use multiplication, and it's already 3/8, but just to show that step, we're going to multiply it by 1. 3 times 1 on top is 3, and 8 times 1 is 8 on the bottom. We have to turn 4 into 8, 1, 2. So we are going to multiply 1/4 by 2, top and bottom. 1 times 2 on the top, 4 times 2 on the bottom. And now we are meeting rule 1, where our bottom number is the same. 3/8 minus 2/8 is 1/8. And then in our whole numbers, 9 minus 5 is 4. And our final answer would be 4 and 1/8. In review, our lesson today is subtracting mixed numbers with unlike denominators. Always check the bottom to make sure they're the same. If they're the same, you can subtract. If there's not, you have to change them. And we do that by using the least common denominator, which means we're using multiples. And then we use multiplication, so do your top and the bottom. Then you subtract, and then you do your whole numbers. All right, thanks everybody.